something that should deserve the attention that answers and to questions rather than written testimony should be given and were usually given. I'm trying to suggest that there is reason why the one last time, or that we will try and fix things if Pakistan does not agree. Maybe one element. Please remember the other element. There is no way in which the American presence in Afghanistan can be sustained without Pakistan's land routes and without Pakistan's airspace. No way that the 4-time increase in air operations can be maintained out of Bagram alone. There are supplements to this from the Gulf, which can only operate through Pakistani airspace. So I think we have to see vulnerabilities on both sides, and we have to see commonalities on both sides. I said to a conference in 2009 that in the past we've had contrived commonalities. We've talked about Soviet occupation. The Americans wanted a humiliation to them. We wanted to be sure that a consolidation in Afghanistan did not lead the Soviet Union to Wagner through Pakistan and Balochistan. Earlier, when we or later, when we cooperated again, both sides came with different, with the same objective, but with different means to be employed. This time, I thought that we had a convergence. Both countries were intent on fighting terrorism, and for us, it was an existential threat. For you, it was perhaps a threat that is going to dominate the American foreign policy and Western policy. I thought, and 2008, I thought for a decade, or I think perhaps another 2 decades from now, we'll continue to see terrorism as the principal issue. Every time I look at the American press, I see that ISIS being denied territory is only the first step, because ISIS is, as an ideology is spreading, and there are many who are taking its name and going ahead. Therefore, it is a very common problem, and it is particularly acute, I think. This is my personal view for Pakistan, because there are many people in Pakistan who have ideologies which run very close to the ideologies that the ISIS professes. So I'll leave this with this thought that on India-Pakistan, I wish we have not made talks conditional. We have not said that there must be. In fact, the essence of our agreement in 2007 was that we will talk on all issues, and on all issues progress will be made at different paces. It is not something that we will end up as saying that until we see progress on Kashmir, we will not talk. We have not done that. But in terms of people who can help with crisis management, the ball is not in our court. India has insisted that all relations between Pakistan and India will be bilateral, and they will not. Today, terrorism is the mantra. If there is a mantra, it is the terrorism. Therefore, keep flogging people in Kashmir, keep blinding them, keep doing what you please, but talk about it as terrorism inspired from across the border. Therefore, no talk. And I asked, when you came to the wedding, when we thought we would make progress, okay, I know Pathankot happened, Uri happened, but that is not the point at that time. So I think we need to make a greater effort. Both sides need to make a greater effort. But at this particular point, I think not only the election cycle, but much more the need to portray Kashmir as a terrorism issue is what is determining India's policies with regard to Pakistan. I'll stop here. I'm sorry I've taken a little bit more time than I should have. So let me just before, because now it's going to be only discussion, I'm not going to open my mouth again. Let me thank the CISS and the IISS for giving me the privilege of chairing this particular session. It's been a very enlightening, very informative session, including particularly the keynote speech, on which I would like to make a half-hour speech myself. I will just and say thank you very much, Sarwat, and your whom the question is addressed.
Thank you, Chair. My brief question is...
Sorry, your name?
My name is Syed Muhammad Ali. I am associated with the CISS. My brief question is aimed at Professor Gale. Ever since President Trump's South Asia speech, there have been several exchange visits, including that of the U.S. Secretary of Defense a couple of days ago, and a meeting of Pakistani Prime Minister with the U.S. Vice President. I would like your take that what has been the U.S. Approach towards these engagements. Does it expect Pakistan to understand what Mr. Trump has articulated, or is it willing to sort of tailor what has been articulated in accordance with the sensitivities of Pakistan in order to maintain and manage this difficult relationship? And secondly, if you could just briefly comment that whether you also refer to that in case of divergences, this time Pakistan might have some consequences because of divergences with the U.S. policy. But could you identify any particular consequence that you have in mind? Thank you.
Have us all wrap up.
No, if there could be addressed to different parallels, I suggest that we take them one time. I'm prepared to change this if this is what the panelists would desire. Okay, that's the advice of the panelists, so Ambassador Yasuka.
My questions are addressed to Professor Gill and to Rao. The only country that does not accept the Durand line is Afghanistan. Overwhelming number of countries have not taken a position on this in the sense that they accept it as a line that is recognized. I think it would have been a great confidence building measure if the United States were to make a very categorical statement on the Durand line, and perhaps even persuade Afghanistan to look at it in a more sensible manner. Similarly, if India were to make a comment, a clear position on this Durand line, that would inject a huge measure of confidence in the region. Instead, although historically India's position has been that it is a recognized international order, but recently at least two former very distinguished Indian ambassadors, Satish Chandra and Sati Lamba, have written articles questioning the Durand line and also encouraging the Afghans to keep going at it. So it's just a thought, perhaps you would like to comment on it.
Let me take the lady with the white point, yes, please.
Thank you, Chair. My question is directed to Mr. Chaudhary. You predicted that there is a possibility of a terrorist incident in India close to the elections. To Mr. Chaudhary. So you have predicted that there could be a terrorist incident in India close to the elections. If such an attack allows a certain party to secure victory, then who is the beneficiary of such attacks? Plus, why does it have to be presupposed that there would be an attack with roots in Pakistan, though you did not mention it to be having links in Pakistan, but if we see the Indian pattern, such kind of attacks are usually blamed on Pakistan. So is this becoming a permanent recipe for Indian version of October surprise? Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have three questions. I think our Pakistani panelists are feeling rather isolated, not receiving any questions. But I'll leave it to Jack and Rahul to answer the questions that have been addressed.
I'll try to be very brief. On the U.S. and Pakistan tailoring or demanding, I think General Mattis was very clear on coming to Pakistan to listen. And of course, anything that we agree will be the result of negotiation. However, I don't want that to be taken as, again, this is just my my perception. I haven't talked to General Secretary Mattis personally. I don't know, or the President or the Secretary of State. But in my view, it should not be taken that the timeline is endless. And the timeline is probably weeks or months, not years, as far as the U.S. government is concerned now. So there will be a negotiation, I'm sure, but the U.S. will be looking for real change and in what will be, for Pakistan, a very short time frame. Consequences I really couldn't predict. There's been a lot of discussion about this in Washington. You can read some of the opinion pieces, but those are just opinion pieces, and so we really don't have a sense, although clearly that's being discussed. On the Durand line, boy, I wish I could persuade lots of people on lots of things. I don't know. Here's a case where the United States finds itself in a position of saying, encouraging perhaps would be a good idea to encourage the Afghans and Pakistanis to come to some agreement. I think I'd have to track down directly what statements the U.S. government has made on the Durand line. I frankly don't have those in my head, and it's such a technical issue in some respects that I don't want to misstate anything. But it does seem, that would seem to be a logical approach that the two sides, and there are areas where they disagree. Sometimes for outsiders it seems kind of insignificant that it's 3 kilometers this way or that way, but it's significant to the two parties involved, so okay. But I wouldn't want to go too far because I really don't know what the official U.S. position is. It does seem that this would be a useful step for Pakistan and Afghanistan to finally say, yes, this is the line, and Pakistan agrees that this part belongs to Afghanistan and this part belongs to Afghanistan agrees this part belongs to Pakistan. So that issue is put aside, but it is, as you know, sir, an extremely sensitive issue domestically in Afghanistan. It's very difficult when with all the other challenges they have to take that on as well.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you, Ambassador Coker. I know, as you know, both the people referred to Sati Lamba and Sati Chandra. I'm aware of what Sati Lamba has written, but I'm not aware of what Sati Chandra has written. And I would like to go and read it because I think in this government, Sati Chandra has great influence than Sati Lamba, so it's important to see what actually is written on this. But I think that it's an important suggestion. I think it may well be sort of a situation where Delhi waits to take any sort of positive movement on this as part of a larger regional approach. I don't see Delhi at the moment making a unilateral approach on these issues. It's an important suggestion to think about. The question earlier in terms of what I was suggesting was that because of the electoral cycle, because of increased possibly official rhetoric, because of media speculation, there is greater uncertainty in the next 20 months, which means that the possibility of a terror attack, another terror attack could take place, or during the electoral cycles. In terms of the beneficiaries of such an attack, I think that depending on the nature of the attack, clearly there will be elements that will benefit a particular electoral process. And I think if you're looking at the Indian electoral process, then an attack in the middle of the election campaign will obviously have an effect on the BJP in a positive way. But that doesn't mean that I think that the government would in any way try to encourage such an attack. But I think the important issue is the one that you raised, which is second point, which is in terms of the roots of the attack. And that is important because that's precisely what I've been trying to say, that it's very important to have a crisis management mechanism to actually look at these issues. When an attack takes place, it's important for both governments to be able to talk to each other to identify precisely this question as to who are the perpetrators, do they belong to a particular organization or not, where do they come from. And in the absence of such communication mechanism, if the attack takes place in India, there is a natural assumption that it is Pakistan-based, that they are of these militant groups carrying out this attack. So precisely to prevent this, it is important that a communication mechanism be established. I think that the Pathankot attacks actually, the post-Pathankot attack period, I thought was encouraging, where both India and Pakistan were talking to each other on this. And there were certain moves, positive moves that were made in trying to investigate the perpetration of this act. Unfortunately, because of other reasons, the investigation hasn't been completed. But my point is precisely for the reason you mentioned. It is important to be able to establish communication effectively to determine who the perpetrator is.
Thank you. I think one of our panelists, Ambassador Khalid Mahmood, has to leave. He has visitors coming to his institute, and they're arriving there at 1:45. So we will let him go. I don't see any other raised hands. Great. Who am I fooling? 1, 2. No. Look, yeah. Look, I'm sorry. I'm going to leave out the people at the back. There's one here, and perhaps one the highest raised hand.
Right next to you.
If you can stretch that one, mic. No, I think.
Yes, okay. This is, my name is Amar Gauri, and from today I'll be the editor of the News Islamabad. So I've come back to Pakistan after a very long time. Could not miss this chance to air. My question is, either Jack or Rahul, that this US spell we have heard about today, and a lot of time from which Pakistan is trying to wake up from, and maybe India is walking into, as if they are the solvers of issues. Keeping the relationship, economic relationship between China and US, their economies are the way it lies, and the ability here in Islamabad, where Islamabad has been saying that maybe during the Afghan crisis, in the last 40 years, with Dr. Reis was mentioning that as if Pakistan was the sole service provider to the American interest, and now as if China would be counted solely through India. All these, keeping these factors in mind, how would you comment on the inability in Delhi and Islamabad to move away from their hardened positions to speak to each other? If we keep America and China out, because these neighbors will not move, they will remain neighbors. So what basically stops Delhi and Islamabad to move away? Because both these countries, China and America, have progressed and graduated and matured a lot in the last few years. We are still there.
So I'm Ahmed Saeed, one of the directors at ISRA and DIV. The Pakistan and India relations, my question is directed to Mr. Pakistan and India relations are seen through the prism of security. You narrated 4 different channels, which basically which are helpful in communicating with each other, BSF radios, DJMOs and NSAs and the High Commission's work. Now how about the making, you forgot about another hotline, that's the hotline taken to foreign centers. Though it falls under the purview of the nuclear CPMs, but how if that hotline could be more effective? One. Secondly, short answer, is there any appetite for the no war factor in the news?
Thank you.
I am Dishan Khan from Muslim Youth University, Islamabad, and my question is that the balance of power is the biggest problem of this region between Pakistan and India is not ready to talk at bigger table. So how is possible to resolve these issues? And other question is that according to Indian and USA perspective, the Pakistan is supporting to Taliban and terrorist organizations. But every year in Pakistan, thousands of people are killed in terrorist attacks. Indian terrorist Kulbhushan Yadav is arrested in Balochistan. So why India is supporting to terrorists?
Thank you. I think either one of you can take it. It's a hot potato, so whichever one decides to take it. This is it now.
First off, in response to Mr. Gauri's question, I couldn't agree more on crisis management. And Rahul and I have talked about this in the past, in public and in private, and crisis management issue that Rahul outlined, I think, very eloquently here. I personally could not agree more. And I'm glad you mentioned the interlinkage of the United States economy and the Chinese economy, because it allows me to make a point that might be useful from a personal perspective for our friends in Pakistan here. And that is that the word containment makes no sense in terms of the United States and China in the 21st century. In the Cold War, containment was possible vis-a-vis the Soviet Union because the Soviet Union, its economy was an autarkic, not connected to the rest of the world, not connected to the United States in any serious way. But we're in a globalized world, and the U.S. and Chinese economies are absolutely interlinked. Containment is not feasible, and nor is it the policy of the United States. Now, the U.S. disagrees with China in very serious ways on a number of issues, as you probably know. But we also collaborate. Again, I turn you to the 3 October Senate Armed Services Committee testimony by Secretary Mattis and General Dunford, where they outline this differentiation. So we cannot and should not think about the U.S. and China in the 21st century the way we would think about the U.S. and the Soviet Union in the Cold War. It's not 2017, not 1977, and it's a very different kind of situation. Does not mean the U.S. agrees with China. Does mean the U.S. has a lot of concerns about China, but it is not a containment strategy. So I just offer that thought. As far as terrorism, I would highlight that U.S. officials from the George W. Bush administration, the Obama administration, and this administration, every single time they talk about Pakistan, every single time, they say Pakistan has suffered very heavily from terrorism. Every single time. From the president on down. Secretary Mattis most recently, but every single time. But the challenge is differentiating, okay, the suffering that Pakistan has had from TTP and other loose terrorists of various types, and the U.S. concern about what the U.S. perceives as a different policy for Pakistan towards a non-Taliban Haqqani network, etc., as you can read again and again from U.S. officials, General Nicholson, Secretary Mattis, Secretary Tillerson, etc. So that's the difference. Conflating all those together does not help us analytically to look at U.S. policy or how the U.S. relates to Pakistan.
I'll be very brief. I'm between lunch and the end of this session. But Amin has raised an important point. I think my response, Amin, is that the India-U.S. relationship, I've not